One still evening, at a roadside gas station, a black nurse and her young son paused to refuel as they headed home. But what began as a quiet stop soon turned into a nightmare when two white officers rolled in. What started with smug remarks spiraled quickly into something far more dangerous. But just as the situation reached its tipping point, a set of headlights cut through the gloom. And when her brother climbed out of the vehicle, those officers were about to realize they'd just messed with the wrong family. But before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from. We love hearing your stories. It was shortly after 9 p.m. on a Monday night when Danielle Brooks steered her silver Honda Accord into pump number 6 off Highway 83. The road was still, unnaturally so. Not soothing quiet, just hollow. A fine drizzle fell in lazy threads, not enough to drench the glass, but enough to slick the pavement in a dull shine. The overhead lights buzzed lowly, casting a pale amber fog across the lot, making the station feel less like a rest stop and more like an afterthought. Danielle exited the car with a faint grunt, her joints tight after working 12 hours straight in the emergency room. Her deep blue scrubs still clung damp near the hem where something had spilled earlier, and the white badge clipped to her shirt, showing her name and photo, shifted gently as she walked. Her face, naturally beautiful, was drawn tight with fatigue, the kind only working mothers know. Shadows under her eyes, hair tugged into a messy knot, lips pressed flat, but her steps were firm. This wasn't out of the ordinary. This was just another Monday. In the back seat, her 10-year-old son Jalen sat cross-legged, his tablet balanced on his knees. He wore a light gray hoodie with the sleeves scrunched at the elbows and a disposable face mask covering his mouth, more from habit than fear. Cold air could trigger his asthma. His inhaler rested beside him like a sidearm, close, needed, and ready. Danielle tapped the glass gently. "I'm running in for water. 2 minutes. You okay, baby?" Jalen looked up, his eyes half-lidded beneath the hoodie. He threw her a thumbs up. "Doing spelling." "Good," she said softly. "Lock the door." She gave a faint smile and stepped toward the pump. Less than 30 feet away, a patrol car idled beside the air station. Inside sat 2 white officers, Brent Holloway, early 40s with a broad chin and sun-seared neck, and Marcus Doyle, thinner and younger, his buzzed head constantly twitching as he cracked his knuckles every few beats like his fingers needed something to strike. Their stares locked on Danielle the second she exited. "Check that out," Doyle muttered, sipping from a to-go cup. "Newer Accord. Custom wheels. Scrubs. Think she owns it?" Holloway chuckled low. "Doubt it. Someone else's ride. Let's see." They stepped out slow. No rush, no urgency, just deliberate. Men used to walking like they owned the asphalt. Danielle noticed instantly. She stood straighter, one hand gripping the pump handle. "Evening," she said calmly, though the curve in her lips didn't reach her gaze. "This your car, ma'am?" Holloway asked, scanning her hands, pockets, badge, and shoes. Everywhere but her eyes. "Yes, sir. Bought it last month. Plates are clean," she replied, reaching into her pocket for her license and registration. Voice cool, firm, never shrinking. Doyle circled the back, pretending to inspect the plate. "We got a report on something that looked like this. Routine check." Danielle handed him the documents. "Everything's in order." They didn't glance at them. Holloway just held the papers, staring hard. "You at River Hill General?" "Yes, I'm a night nurse." He tilted his head, smirk playing at the corner. "Funny. Don't exactly look like it. A car like that," Holloway said slowly, eyeing her. Danielle blinked. Once, then again. No reply. She'd heard it all before. Knew what was behind that comment. Inside the car, Jalen's fingers had stilled. His tablet lay forgotten on his lap as he stared through the glass. Something in his mother's shoulders told him things weren't right. Her movements had slowed. Her voice had changed. Her arms weren't moving the way they usually did. Quietly, Jalen reached into his bag, pulled out his phone. The screen lit up just beneath his hood. He typed fast. "Mom in trouble. 2 cops. Gas station. Highway 83. Come quick." He sent it to one contact, Uncle T. Then he opened his voice memos. With a quick tap, he started recording, slipping the phone beneath his coat, holding it against his chest. Danielle hadn't noticed. She was focused, eyes locked on Holloway. He stepped in close, too close. She caught a whiff of stale coffee on his breath. "Anything in that car we should know about?" he asked. "My son," she replied evenly. "That's who's in there. 10 years old. Doing schoolwork." Doyle leaned toward the glass on the passenger side, cupping his hand to peer inside. Jalen froze. but the phone stayed recording. 10, huh? Doyle said loudly. He looks older. That him in the back? Danielle nodded. Yes, and I'd like you not to intimidate him. That's when she saw it. A sheet taped to the station's storefront door. Security system temporarily offline, under maintenance. Her stomach dropped. No footage, no eyes. And the way both officers subtly shifted. They'd seen it too. Holloway's grin returned, slow and smug. Well, would you look at that? He muttered, mostly to himself. Looks like it's just the three of us tonight. Jalen crouched low in the seat, held his breath. The red light on his phone blinked gently beneath his hoodie. Still recording, still listening. And that's how it started. Not with yelling, not with sirens. With a smile that wasn't friendly, and a question that wasn't meant to be answered. Danielle could feel it now. The shift. The kind of danger that doesn't shout. It coils. Tightly. Waiting. Holloway had dropped the act. The smile had vanished, replaced with something settled and sharp. Doyle stood a few feet back now, arms crossed, jaw clenched, like he'd already decided where this would go. Danielle's chest tightened. Not from fear. Not yet. From calculation. She'd treated injuries like these before. Knew the look of someone used to getting away with it. And tonight, no cameras were watching. I'd like my ID returned, she said, steady and clear. Her hands rested on the pump handle, knuckles white. There's no problem here. Holloway didn't budge. He stared at her like she was beneath him. Then slowly, deliberately, he tossed the documents toward her chest. They fluttered, then dropped, half landing in a puddle. Oh, getting bold now, huh? He said. That how y'all talk to cops where you're from? Danielle bent down slowly. Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't. I'm speaking as a citizen. You stopped me with no reason. I gave you what you asked. Doyle stepped closer to the vehicle. Maybe she's hiding something. She keeps looking back at that car. I'm looking at my son, Danielle replied, standing tall again. He's 10, and he's scared. You're scaring him. 10? Holloway repeated, narrowing his eyes. 10 years old, sitting in a car like that this late? What kind of mother brings a kid out here at night? He stepped forward. You even sure that's your kid? Yours? Holloway sneered. Danielle's jaw tightened. Leave my son out of this. Inside the car, Jalen's breathing shifted. Quicker, shallower. He leaned sideways, gripping his inhaler but not yet pressing it. Trying to hold off, trying not to panic. But the air felt thin, like something vital had been pulled from the space around him. And the officers' voices? Louder now. Angrier. You want to get smart? Doyle snapped, circling back toward Danielle's side of the car. Go ahead. Call somebody. Call the damn president for all I care. Danielle reached into her scrub pocket, fingers trembling as she searched for her brother's number. Her hand wasn't shaking from fear. It was rage. But just as her thumb hovered over the call button, Holloway stepped in fast. Not happening, he growled, knocking the phone from her hand with a hard slap. It clattered to the pavement, sliding under the back wheel. You don't start dialing when we're speaking, he barked. That's my property, Danielle snapped, stepping forward on instinct. And that's when it turned. Holloway shoved her backward with an open palm, slamming her into the side of the car. Doyle came around quick, seizing her wrist and wrenching it high. Stop resisting, he barked, twisting harder, ignoring the sound that escaped her, a mix of pain and disbelief. Let me go. My son's in the car. He's watching. That brat? Doyle sneered, jerking his head toward the window. He's faking it. Ain't nothing wrong with him. Just trying to pull sympathy. Inside, Jalen's vision swam. His chest burned. He fumbled with the inhaler, but his hands shook too much to press it. Mama, he rasped, barely audible. Mama, I can't breathe. Danielle's voice split the air. He's having an asthma attack. He needs that inhaler now. Shut your mouth, Holloway bellowed, yanking the back door open. He reached in and slapped the device from Jalen's hands. Ain't no kid pulling this trick to cover for his mom. Jalen let out a sound, raw, choked, and doubled forward, gasping. Danielle wrenched herself free in a burst of desperate strength, diving into the back seat. She grabbed the inhaler from the floor and forced it into his hands. Press it, baby. Press down. Now. Before she could help him further, Doyle yanked her from behind again, dragging her backward roughly. Yeah, that's it. Keep fighting. That's a resisting charge right there. You're hurting her, Jalen cried, barely able to yell between gasps. Well, Holloway muttered, slamming the car door shut. Look at this. Little man's got lungs after all. He sneered. Both of you think you're untouchable tonight? Think I won't slam you right here? Danielle trembled now. Not from fear, but fury, helplessness, injustice. And then the night cracked open. Tires screamed against wet pavement. A black SUV screeched to a stop, just feet away. Danielle was kneeling, cradling her son in her arms, as the vehicle's headlights blazed through the rain, casting a harsh glare over the scene. The two officers froze in the white-hot beam. Holloway's hand went toward his belt. Doyle edged back, fingers twitching toward his taser. But then the door opened. A tall black man stepped out, broad-shouldered, dressed in a sharp dark suit. He didn't shout, didn't rush, just walked. Each step carried weight, the kind that made people stand straighter. He approached the chaos, unfazed, reached into his jacket, raised a leather case. A badge gleamed like a blade under the light. "Mayor Terrence Brooks," he said, voice low but clear. "Get your hands off my sister. Now." Silence dropped. Even the flickering light above the store seemed to pause. Holloway's hand fell. Doyle glanced sideways. Lost. "She was resisting," Holloway started. "No." Terrence cut him off, voice sharp as a blade. "What she was doing was staying alive. What you were doing, breaking damn near every code you swore to follow." Doyle's mouth opened, desperate for footing. "We believed there was—" "You believed nothing," Terrence interrupted, eyes locked on him like steel jaws. "You had no probable cause, no warrant, and now you've laid hands on an unarmed woman, in front of her child, in a neighborhood you thought no one would care about." He stepped back, motioning toward the street, and like shadows summoned from nowhere, two marked River Hill cruisers rolled in. Sirens off, lights flashing in a silent whirl. Doors popped open fast. Officers emerged with purpose, their movements crisp. One officer gave Terrence a firm nod. "We received the alert, sir. Instructions from dispatch. We're standing by." "Officers Doyle and Holloway," Terrence said with icy calm, "are to be disarmed immediately. Effective this moment. Administrative custody." "What?" Holloway spun toward them. "You can't be serious? You're going off his word?" "He's family and a federal officer," the sergeant replied coldly. "And you are not above protocol." Holloway stood frozen, lips twitching. But when two younger cops moved in, gloved hands ready, he finally tore off his belt, slamming it onto the hood. "This is a damn joke," he snarled. "She should have stayed home if she didn't want questions." Terrence didn't flinch. "You just secured your suspension. Keep talking, and you'll be facing formal charges." While the officers were being separated, red and white lights appeared at the far side of the station. A medic unit pulled up fast. One paramedic, short gray hair, quick eyes, dropped to her knees beside Danielle. Vitals unstable. Kid's airflow is tight. Mother's BP's through the roof. Danielle's voice was hoarse. "We need to go. Now." Terrence crouched beside her, gently resting a hand on her shoulder. His voice dropped low, tight with emotion. "You're going," he said. "And I'm going with you. You're safe now." He helped her stand, while medics secured Jalen on a stretcher. The boy's hand found hers mid-lift, fingers locking around hers like a grip on solid ground. His chest moved easier now, but his face was pale, eyes blank. Terrence leaned down, brushed Jalen's forehead with care. "You were brave tonight," he whispered. "You saved her. You saved everything." Danielle turned to him, half lifted into the ambulance. "How'd you know?" "Jalen texted me," Terrence said, "and he recorded everything. They thought the cameras were out, but they didn't silence the mics." Inside the ambulance, as the rear doors swung closed and the lights spun into red spirals, Danielle turned her head for one final look. She saw a cluster of bystanders now forming, drawn by headlights and tension. The gas station looked nothing like the place she'd stopped an hour ago. Holloway stood restrained, spitting rage into the air, shouting at no one. Doyle slumped near the curb, head bowed, hands limp. Terrence remained at the center, arms crossed, jaw set like stone. The streets of River Hill weren't quiet anymore. Not tonight. At City Hall the next morning, the conference room was too clean, too still. The long, polished table stretched like a courtroom bench under buzzing white lights. Cold blue shadows clung to every corner. The air felt sterile, like something out of an OR or a morgue. A room for decisions, not healing. Danielle sat stiff-backed in a soft chair that felt harder than steel. Her shoulder was wrapped in gauze, bandage peeking from beneath a loose sweatshirt. Her skin pale, but her eyes steady. No tears now. That part was done. Jalen sat curled beside her, blanket on his knees, hospital juice in both hands. He hadn't said a word since the ambulance. Jalen's eyes weren't foggy anymore. They were sharp, steady, tracking every adult in the room with the kind of gaze kids aren't supposed to have, the kind that says, "I grew up tonight." He'd heard things no child should, seen his mother shoved, manhandled, slapped, felt the sting of a stranger's palm against his own face, and yet he'd had the presence of mind to press record. Everyone was starting to realize he wasn't just a victim. He was the reason this room existed. Across from him stood Christopher Hall, not the mayor right now, just Terrence's brother, Danielle's, Jalen's uncle. His suit was immaculate. His hands were not. They trembled slightly as he held a black tablet. The screen paused mid-frame. He hadn't spoken. He was listening, letting the weight of what had happened land. The only sounds were the faint crackle of the speaker and the steady click of a pen behind him. Then, the footage rolled. First came static, then image. The glow of gas station lights. Danielle's voice, calm but firm, right before her phone hit the pavement. Then the hard thump of her body colliding with the vehicle. And then the worst part, the slap. Loud, brutal, followed by Jalen's scream. A child's voice cracking, then the ragged wheeze of tightening lungs. Doyle's mocking tone. Holloway laughing like it was a prank. Then silence. Hall hit pause. No one moved. Danielle leaned forward. Her voice was low but laser-focused. "Tell me you're not letting that slide." Hall's eyes didn't leave the screen. "We're going public." They did. Not in the grand city rotunda. Not with polished wood and waving flags. But in a cramped beige press room with a glitching exit sign and cords snaking behind one lonely mic. No anthem. No spectacle. Just facts. And fire. Reporters whispered, adjusted lenses, scanned screens. Morning press was routine. But that changed when Hall stepped up. He wasn't angry. He was exact, measured. Both palms hit the table. "Last night," he said, "2 officers abused their power. They attacked a mother, a nurse, in front of her child. They mocked her, assaulted her, and struck her son." Chairs creaked. Pens stilled. They thought there were no cameras, that there'd be no record, but they were wrong. Behind him the video began. Danielle's terror. Jalen scrambling for his inhaler. Doyle's raised hand. No blur, no edits. The room erupted. Questions fired rapid. "Is she your sister? Was the child hospitalized? What are the charges?" Hall raised a hand. "This isn't about family. It's about justice. This city no longer protects uniforms who abuse. Not anymore." Across town, the mood was different. In a fluorescent back room of the precinct, Holloway and Doyle sat cuffed to a steel bench. They weren't ashamed. They were furious. "This is BS!" Doyle snapped, twisting at the cuffs. "They're throwing us to the wolves over some woman and her fake asthma kid." A nearby officer flinched but stayed quiet. Holloway barked, "You let him film this circus? They're gonna hang us in public. You think people want truth? Hell no, they want outrage." No one replied. No one believed them. By mid-afternoon, the footage had spread like wildfire. News tickers screamed, "Nurse assaulted at pump, child attacked in arrest. Mayor demands consequences." Hashtags surged. Justice for Danielle. Protect black kids. Accountability. Now. And the city didn't just react. It rose, not with signs and megaphones, but with strollers, nursing shoes, EMT jackets, people who knew her, who'd been treated by her, who worked beside her. Back inside City Hall, Danielle sat quietly. Jalen's head rested against her side. He was asleep, breathing softly. Her hand moved gently through his curls. She turned to her brother. "You think they'll really pay for what they did?" Terrence didn't lie. "If they don't," he said slowly, "this city's not staying quiet." Sirens echoed somewhere in the city. Not screaming with fury, but maybe, just maybe, signaling change. The courtroom was packed. Not with news crews chasing headlines. Not with distant onlookers. But with people who had known the truth long before it hit the airwaves. Nurses still in scrubs. Janitors with dust still on their shoes. Teachers with sleep-deprived eyes. Mothers with toddlers curled on their laps. There were no chants, no banners. Just silence. Heavy and thick. The kind of stillness that says, "We've been here before, but not like this." Danielle sat near the front, her arm in a sling, her son holding her hand with both of his. Jalen wore a collared shirt and polished black shoes, like he was headed to church. But his jaw was tight, like he was holding back everything he didn't know how to say. He hadn't spoken much in days, not because of fear, because he was watching. Mayor Hall entered from a side door, not in formal wear, no tie, just a dark pullover and pressed slacks. Today he wasn't here as an official. He was a brother, an uncle, a citizen. He gave Danielle a short nod. She gave one back. Nothing needed saying. The judge entered. The gavel struck. The hearing began. The prosecution didn't narrate. They didn't need to. The video spoke for them. Play. Doyle shoving Danielle into the car. Holloway's laughter. Jalen's voice cracking. The slap. The gasps weren't loud. They were tired. Like old wounds ripped open. Doyle's attorney tried. Said Danielle had an aggressive stance. That Jalen had been coached. Holloway's lawyer called it a mistake. A standard stop gone sideways. Then came the testimony. The gas station technician. An older white man. Gentle. Soft-spoken. He explained how the cameras had been down. But just that morning he'd reconnected the system. The footage was live. Time-stamped. Synced with Jalen's audio. There was no room left for denial. When Danielle took the stand, her voice didn't waver. She spoke slowly, clearly, like someone who'd replayed that night 1,000 times. "I wasn't afraid for me," she said. Her eyes didn't leave the jury. "I was afraid I wouldn't reach my son's inhaler in time." Jalen wasn't called to testify, but the court heard his recording, his breathless pleas, his cries, every word. Holloway's voice, "Welfare queen." Doyle's taunt, "Faking asthma for pills?" The jury left. When they returned, no one leaned forward. Everyone already knew. Guilty. Excessive force. Assault. Child endangerment. False reporting. The judge didn't mince words. "This court finds both defendants guilty and unfit to ever wear a badge in this city. You are hereby stripped of credentials and taken into custody pending sentencing." Danielle didn't smile. Neither did Hall. But the air in the room shifted. A crack in the weight. A breath finally exhaled. Outside, the crowd had grown. It wasn't a rally. It was a presence. No yelling. No fists raised. Just stillness. Some held signs. Most just stood, facing the courthouse, like a mirror. Danielle and Jalen stepped out quietly. A few clapped. One woman reached out and touched Danielle's hand. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not staying quiet." Danielle looked at her son. "He's the one who spoke." Hall approached, handed Jalen a small object, a bent, scorched police badge sealed in glass. "Used to be mine," Hall said quietly. "I left the force 15 years ago, when I realized not every uniform defends. Maybe one day they will, but it starts with you." Jalen hesitated, then nodded. He held the frame to his chest. 3 weeks later, the city passed the Jalen Carter Act. Mandatory body cams at all stops. Criminal penalties for deactivation or falsified reports. A new civilian review board was sworn in. Danielle was named its lead advisor. She hadn't asked for it, but she showed up anyway, because change doesn't wait for permission. Jalen returned to school, a little quieter, a little older. When classmates asked what happened, he'd shrug. "It was loud," he'd say. When they asked if he'd be a cop someday, "Nah," he answered. "I want to be a doctor, but I won't forget what I saw." Danielle went back to nursing. One night, while checking vitals, an older black woman gripped her hand gently. "You made it better," she whispered. "For the next nurse who looks like you." Danielle just nodded. Sometimes, that's enough. Not peace, not justice, but a shift, a fracture, and through that crack, light.